Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Thursday, September 21st, 2017. I'm Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. It's Thursday. That means 24/7 Sports Director of Recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, has made some time to join us. Steve, generally overcast, but getting warmer here in the Gem City. How is it in Indy?
Lashana Tova, Daniel. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year to all, yep.
But
I'm going to confuse X% of our listeners, but go ahead.
It's a holy day for us. Let's talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes on the recruiting trail, my friend.
And we're going to start off today with the number one guy in Ohio who has become very interesting, if he wasn't already. That's Jackson Carman, left tackle, out of Fairfield. Yesterday he had his jersey, Army All-American jersey presentation. Our Bill Kurlick was there. There is a video footage of the event and his subsequent interview online now on Bucknuts. It's an interesting interview. We were talking a little bit about Jackson before we got on the air here. You know, it's clear the incident's probably a strong word, but the experience he's had recently on social media with Kirk Herbstreit and such has had some impact on him, because if you listen to the questions he's asked, every question about Ohio State, he puts in context with that without even being asked about it. So it's certainly been, lingering. But like I said, Jackson Carman is no knucklehead. He knows what he's saying. He knows what he's doing. He believes what he's saying. He thinks he's a very famous guy who's under a lot of pressure, and maybe that's affecting his decision-making. I still get the vibe he's an Ohio State Buckeye when it's all said and done, but I will also say that after hearing him talk and seeing the interview, I'd be less surprised if he bailed. What's your vibe on Carman as a guy, and kind of how you think everything's going to work out in the end?
Same vibe. I feel like I feel like he's going to end up at Ohio State, but I haven't slept on Clemson since he visited them in the spring and named him as leader. And I know people thought that he was trying to give us the okie doke, because the 24/7 Sports crystal ball was all Ohio State. Everyone thinks the in-state kid's always going to go to Ohio State. And he was maybe trying to create some drama regarding his recruitment, but I don't think that's the case. I think he's genuinely interested in Clemson. And quite frankly, I think he's genuinely interested in USC as well. He had a great multi-day visit out to Southern Cal in the summer. I just think when all the chips are on the table and he's going to make his college decision, I would think that I think Ohio State and Clemson are the top two right now. Now we'll see. He's going to take those officials in December. We'll see how the seasons shake out for people. We'll see how he continues to connect with people. But Ohio State was recruiting him as hard as anybody, recruiting him the hardest, talking to him at different times in the process. And then, what you brought up to segue into the question, we all, as men, have moments that we wish we could have back or wish we could do it differently. And I'm not even speaking for Jackson. Maybe he wouldn't do it differently. But for us to judge a man by one instant, whether we agree or disagree, you make your comment about it, you say it is what it is, and then you keep it moving. And Jackson's keeping it moving, and then I've already forgotten about it myself. It happened and it's over. But for Jackson, I just want to see him continue to get better as a senior, and then bring his lunch pail with him wherever he goes, because he has a tremendous amount of talent. But the position he plays, it's hard to walk in and be a day one dude like Trey Smith is at Tennessee right now.
The most outlandish thing he said in his interview was that Fairfield would be in contention for a state championship as high school. They've already lost to Dayton, Powers, Centerville, and Northmont, so that's not going to happen. I would really encourage everyone to go to Bucknuts, because you're already there, by the way, and not read. You can read it, or you can watch the video interview with him. It's pretty interesting stuff. He's not, I don't know how even to say it. He seems like a guy who's been through a lot. I know his upbringing wasn't the easiest. There are times when there's these Twitter kerfuffles come up, and I think the kid has just spouted off or said something he didn't think. I believe Carman believes what he said. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. The thing that's unfortunate about it is then the Ohio State staff has to answer questions about it from the national media and people that don't normally even give a shit about recruiting. are now asking the Ohio State staff about it. So I think it was disrespectful for him to put them in that position, but it's over. And he said what he said, and I think everyone's moving on. And again, he's a terrific prospect. He's a sharp kid, and we've all said things that we wish we could have back, or we've all done things that smart people do things that aren't smart at times. And then, he's going to make his decision and sign in December and enroll early to the school of his choice. Clemson and USC do terrific jobs with on-campus visitors. I think Clemson's as good as any program in the country when they get a young man on campus and making him feel very comfortable. Clay Helton at USC, I spent some time out there in the spring, and he has a very laid-back atmosphere that players really feel comfortable in when they're on campus. And at all three of those places, you include Ohio State. Those guys are players, coaches, Urban Meyer, Dabo Swinney, Clay Helton. So you get those guys around the locker room, and the players in the locker room speak highly of the staff that they're playing for and in the environment they're in. But Jackson Carman, Ohio State, that's still my pick, and we'll see how those officials shake out in December.
He says that on the interview with Bill that he'll be taking his official visits and then making his decision, and he does plan to enroll early, so we are not going to have to wait that much longer for his decision. Moving on. The other major topic at Ohio State, or one of the other major ones, defensive end recruiting and the trio of Tyreek Smith, Micah Parsons, and Jason Owe. Musical defensive ends, as we called it in the boarding house. You have all three crystal ball to State College, Pennsylvania. Explain yourself.
Well, they're not all going to go there. That's just how it worked out right now. I could easily switch Owe to Ohio State right now. That's the one. I as it stands right now, I think Tyreek Smith's going to go to Penn State. I don't see Coach Franklin and Penn State passing on Micah Parsons, although scholarships, it's very tight right now in State College. And then I think that Owe, who is a coveted target by both, goes to Ohio State. Now, that doesn't mean that have Tyreek Smith signed, sealed, and delivered to Penn State. I certainly recognize that Ohio State could land it. But all the intel I have, as it stands right now, I think Penn State leads for Tyreek Smith.
Let's talk about Tyreek Smith before we go on to Owe. I'm not going to say it came out of nowhere, but I think everyone kind of assumed Cleveland kid, Ohio State offer. He'll eventually land in the fold. Now, he's not from Ohio originally. I get that. But the turn seemed rather drastic. Was it a visit? Is he intimidated by the depth chart? What do you think the vibe for Penn State came across from?
I think the assumption that he was going to Ohio State was incorrect, and he certainly likes Ohio State, so don't get me wrong. I mean, they're in that top 2 or 3 for him, and he's been to Ohio State, but I think that people underestimated Penn State's position for him, and then doing some digging recently on where things stood with Tyreek Smith, I stand corrected, and I feel that Penn State leads for him over Ohio State and USC, and then Alabama and Oregon rounding out his top 5. You look at the way he set up his visits, too, I think that points to Penn State being in the best position. No school in that top 5 has recruited him longer than Penn State, and so they have a great shot to land him, and I think they're the team to beat as he continues to go through the process. He was at USC over the weekend, and then he's got upcoming trips. He's taking an to the Penn State. They're the only program getting an unofficial right now, and then he's going back for an official in December, whether that's the first week or the second week, depending on if Penn State's playing in the Big Ten championship or not. And then he's announcing his decision at the Under Armour game.
Let's hope Penn State and Ohio State, neither one loses before they meet on the field, because that's both for on-field and off-field implications. That's going to be a big, big game.
So Owe, sorry, we almost didn't get back on track. Owe, I think, goes back and forth. My Penn State pick's old. I could technically go on Foggy just as easily as I could go on Ohio State, because Owe goes back and forth, and he said something interesting to me after his last. He took an unofficial to Penn State over the weekend. He had a former high school teammate that played for Georgia State, so they had a game, and then him and a couple players and a coach hopped in the car and drove from New Jersey to Penn State, and I asked where things stood with Ohio State and Penn State point blank, and he said it wouldn't be a fair question to answer having not taken an official to Penn State yet. So I took from that Ohio State maybe has the edge for him coming off his official for the Oklahoma game, and then Parsons is, I just wonder if Penn State will pass on him, and numbers are tight, and they would love to have Tyreek Smith and Owed too, so we'll just see how it shakes out.
Definitely. It's an interesting one. Going to be a very cool stretch on here too. I think Ohio State just fine. Speaking of which,
no doubt,
we've been through. Go ahead.
One thing I want to talk about with Ohio State, and you and I talked about this before the show last week, or maybe it was earlier in the week. I lose track. You talk about Ohio State's quarterback room. Well, first of all, you love the way that they've recruited at the point of attack on both sides, and especially if they can finish this class out with like a Tommy Togiai and then one of the DNs we talked about with Chase Young, and you got Bosa next year. But I just look at that quarterback room, and everyone's talking about Haskins and Burrow and who's the next man up. And for me, I'm just very intrigued by Tate Martell, and I know I was hard on his ranking of where we had him, where he could have been ranked coming out of high school. But the more I watch Baker Mayfield and Trace McSorley, my mind has kind of changed. Like, I really think Tate Martell can be just as good as those guys in college. He's just an unbelievable player and winner, always performs at the highest level in the biggest moments. He's been scrutinized for so long that there's nothing that's going to get him off his game at Oklahoma from that standpoint of the scrutiny that you get playing that position at Ohio State. He was committed to Washington in middle school, and then there was just a ton of scrutiny on him his entire high school career, and he brought it on himself, and he relishes it. He relishes the moment, relishes the competition. He's intriguing to me as a guy that could lead Ohio State back to a national championship, because I think you have to have big stones at that position to make big plays in big games, and he can do that in addition to just, the tangibles of the position of getting your protection right, knowing what you need to do and all that. I think he has those intangibles. And so I'm just interested in what happens at quarterback after JT, because Tate didn't come there to hold anyone's briefcase either. And I know Haskins is talented and Burrow's a great athlete. We talked about that, great basketball player and all that. So,
and keep in mind, Emory Jones is coming in next year, another high-profile, physically gifted player. I'll say this: I was with Mr. Bucknuts for the West Point Army game this past weekend, and we sit X rows back on the team side, Buckeye side, so you can see the guys hanging out and stuff. Martell has got some swag to him. I mean, the way he wears his uniform is different than everybody else. He's not even in the game, and he kind of has a little something to him. I don't know how to explain that on the sideline. He's conversing with the dudes. He's up. He's certainly no shrinking violet. And I have heard from people that have watched practice, people who have been to the practice that no one is supposed to see, the description I keep getting is Johnny Manziel without the mental baggage. So we all know Johnny Manziel had a ton of mental baggage, but if you remember back to what he was as a football player, I mean, he was about as dynamic a college football player as we've seen. So, and development at quarterback, like you said, though, but who is the quarterback at Ohio State over the next few years? As interesting as it is now, and believe me, our site is living off the fact that we're trying to run Barrett out on a rail, and I understand that. The quarterback position is going to be fascinating to follow here over the next year or two.
And I just compared Tate. Obviously, I think most people get it, but I compared them to two guys that are similar in stature. That are
and Manziel the same. He's not a big dude now.
But Martell's thick.
He's not a big guy.
He's not slight.
Yep.
Martell's thick though. He's not slight in build now. He's a big. Looks like a second baseman.
Yep.
So
He looks like Brett Barbary. Everyone can Google that. You can too after the show. Anyway, what I was going to ask you, who's the best team in the Big Ten?
Well, I think Penn State's playing the best. I know people have said they're playing Cupcake City, but I mean, shit, they're averaging 47 points a game and only giving up 4. It's been very dominant. And so, and even coming into the season, I had said I think they have the best skill players on offense in the Big Ten from running back, tight end, receiver standpoint collectively. And their offensive line has gotten better every year under Franklin. They finally have 2 deep depth. But Ohio State, they have what should be the best defense. Michigan's certainly playing very well on defense. They got a fast, hard-hitting defense as well. I got to go Penn State right now. But seasons ebb and flow, and we'll see how it continues.
We will see. Some interesting chatter. Jackson Carman, recruiting, Tate Martell, the quarterback situation, Penn State, Ohio State. We tried to hit it all. Have a good one, Bucknutters.